All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Working Towards Black. Working Towards Black is a series of conversations between the diaspora amongst themselves and with the continent of Africa. The goal for the show is to build bridges, to build relationships, to dispel myths, and to really dive deeper into conversation so that we can really get to a place of unity and what I call working towards Black and Black as a political identity for a collective understanding and unity. Today we have Sulayman Gaye. Thank you very much, Sulayman, for being here. He's checking in from Gambia. I don't know that Gambian. I'm gonna give his bio while I think the internet is gonna try to come back. So Suleiman has a BA in mathematics and a master's in statistics. He's a senior planner for the government of Gambia and transportation and infrastructure. And he has agreed to talk with us today, and I hope that his internet comes back. Oh, I lost him. So I will talk for a bit about what we've been doing. I don't know if you guys have seen any of the other shows, but I encourage you to go back. Kind of on a roll. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we do this at 6 o'clock. We do change the time if it's necessary, so that we can accommodate our people all over the continent. And these conversations have been rich and really beautiful. And so we have Suleiman back. Thank you, Suleiman, for coming back to us.
Thank
I've
you.
given them your introduction. Suleiman, where did
Sure.
you go to school? Where did you do uni?
I thank you, Tanisha, for having me.
Mhm.
If I can hear your question, because we're having some internet issues here. Did
Okay.
you ask what did I do at uni?
Yeah,
That's
I
okay?
said, yeah, where did you go to
Uh,
school? Because I know that you grew up in Gambia, but you ended up,
yeah.
I think, going to school in the US, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I studied in the US at the City University of New York, and I came back home and studied at the University of the Gambia as well. And I also studied in Senegal at Gaston Berger University. This is one of their science and technology university. Yep.
Nice. So I really want people to start getting some understanding. Gambia is a hot spot right now for
Yeah.
expatriates. It's a
Yeah.
hot spot for the diaspora coming back. It's a welcoming place. It speaks English. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. What was it like being a young boy in Gambia?
Yeah. I was a very normal boy in Gambia, like every normal boy, everywhere. I loved life. I was very inquisitive. I wanted to know. I played soccer, I had a clear conscience in Gambia growing up, as a young man, definitely.
Did you recognize yourself as an African? Was that a part of the conversation around you, or was it just understood?
Yeah, it was just understood. I mean, when I was growing up, the environment was natural to me. I didn't have this global perspective about the world around us, you know, because when I was growing up, the media was not very developed as today, although we watch TV, we watch the news and all that. But I had this consciousness that I am just who I am, a human being. I know there are other races around the world, but I just know that I am African. Yeah,
Mm. And
yeah.
so as you're growing up and you're starting to, because I mean, what is colonialism and post-colonialism like in Gambia? Were you aware of any conflicts or pushback, or was it just not something that was a part of your life?
No, actually, colonialism was never a part of my life because in the beginning, when I was growing up, I didn't, have this awareness, this global, awareness. It was not very detailed in me. I knew we had a government, we had institutions of governance, and my attention was onto that there was nothing like holding us back. I didn't build up this consciousness about colonialism in detail, except some of the lessons I did in school, so things were just normal to me that, there was no outside force that is still, within us as a hangover or something. Yeah.
Hmm. Did that
Yeah.
stay the same throughout your life? Did that shift or change?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that changed a lot. That really changed big time. When I was growing up, I started reading books, from school to, other material that I could hold on to. And it really changed my perspective, especially when I left for America. But when I was growing up, things were just very normal to me. I thought I was in my natural environment. I didn't know a lot about the world, definitely.
So that
Yeah.
experience in the US, how did it change you? What was your expectation and then how did it change you?
When I was growing up, until in high school, before high school, when I was growing up in primary, lower basic school, we watch movies. We had cinemas all over town. We watch mainly American and Indian movies, so that influenced us a lot. The motion picture industry, influenced us a lot to seeing, America and this Western world as this, and as this heaven sort of, where everyone is rich, where everyone was wealthy and life was very good, so this was the psyche. This was in our psyche, and I went to high school later in the 90s, and this was the era of Michael Jordan, and we had our colleagues wearing Michael Jordan shoes. We saw it on TV, on TV shows and all these things. We saw these big basketball players, and by then some of those who were older than us, already went to America, and they were sending us photos, pictures of them, pictures of them in the US.
Hmm.
That influenced us greatly, that we all wanted to be in America. We all wanted to go to Europe or America, because we saw these pictures. We were bombarded with these images that these were places, that are really good. Life is good there, and you can easily make money, and get rich, so this was definitely left in our psyche,
Hmm.
you know yeah. And then, I finished high school, and then I was able to go to America, and but before I went to America, when I was growing up, I didn't have this perspective of the racial composition of America. You know, I thought that this was a land of white people, because the issue of Black Americans never. I knew that there were Black Americans in America, but it never occurred to me that it was this detail. That I just thought that there were traces of Black people in America. Yeah, but when I
Had
went
you
to
learned
America,
about the slave trade? Did you know any of the historical experiences of African Americans before you came?
I didn't. Actually, I just knew that the slavery took place because we had lessons in high school. I knew that slavery happened, and but I thought that those were back in the days in ancient times, And when I was growing up, I didn't know that um, our people, the Africans that were taken here,
We've lost your sound.
sorry, it was an
There you go.
interruption. I was having a phone call. Sorry.
Okay, you're a busy man. We understand. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I didn't have this detailed perspective about slavery, and the descendants of slaves. I knew that slavery, happened, that some of our people were taken and shipped to America, but my knowledge about slavery stopped at that, you know. I didn't know that our people survived slavery and that they were in the U.S. So this was the blockade of information that we
Hmm.
had when we were growing up. I don't know whether it was by design or whether I don't know what was responsible for that, but I didn't have this consciousness of Black African Americans in the US, until I went to America,
And so,
basically.
what was that experience like? Like, you get here, and then what's happening? What's going through your mind? What are you having? Good experiences, bad experiences?
Oh, I definitely had a mixed experience in the US.
Mm.
It was a really, really mixed experience. I mean, I went to America and I saw um the 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 very many black people who were living in the US. I said, wow, is this, I mean, almost, is this like the whole of Africa or half of Africa living in the US?
Where
I
were
didn't,
you?
yeah, where
Where,
was I? How come I didn't know that,
but what
black
city were you
people.
in?
Oh, I started in New York.
Ah,
I started in New York, and I stayed in New York for a couple of months and later went to my sister, who is living in North Carolina.
oh, so you were in
Yeah,
the Mecca of Black people.
exactly. I
Mhm.
stayed in Raleigh for a year or so, then moved to Columbus, Ohio. I stayed there for a year. Columbus, Ohio, I went to a friend because one of my friends told me, "Hey, come to Columbus, Ohio. It's good in here, and so that we can get close to each other." He was my high school buddy, so I just went to Columbus and I stayed there for some time and thought that, hey, I should go back to New York.
Gambia is gonna get it together. We're gonna get it together. Hopefully, he's gonna come back soon. What I found fascinating about some of these stories is that you hear over and over again how much the media is an influence, and I think on both sides of the fence, right? And when I say both, I want to make sure that I don't leave the Caribbean out, that I don't leave all of the Black diaspora out, and all the other countries that exist. And I will be having people on from the Caribbean, from other places, from the UK. But I think that there's this ongoing idea that the media really does play a big role in how we've learned to understand each other. And anybody knows that have studied media that that's extremely problematic when in relationship to Blackness, because the media has been so anti-Black. And fantasy oriented. So I'm bringing Sulayman back in. I was just talking about the influence of the media. So where
Yeah,
do you end up
definitely.
settling, and how does your experiences start to take shape?
Yeah, my experiences started to take shape immediately I entered in the US. When I entered in the US, I experienced, Black people. I saw a multicultural environment, a sort of, I mean, the hustle and bustle of New York. very metropolitan, and I started to see Africa from a different angle. I mean, going to the US really helped broaden my perspective. I started to, and I was growing up as well, because there is wisdom in age also. You tend to broaden your horizon with age. So I started forming these opinions, seeing the bigger picture. You know,
What were you
and
seeing? What were some of the specifics that you were seeing?
I mean, I was like, what the hell is going on in this world? I mean, you know, how come, Africa is in this state, and America is in this state, and you have so many black people in America here, and you still have so many African people wanting to come to America. I mean, what is wrong? I started questioning. I started connecting the dots. I started, seeing discrimination. I started seeing neo-colonialism. you
Mm,
know yeah, I started seeing corruption, on the part of Africa. I started seeing, a lot of different, stuff responsible for the state Africa is at the moment. And, that perspective, stems from within Africa, from outside of Africa. So when you combine all these forces, then I started to, I always had this pan-Africanist, mindset.
mhm.
At a very early age, I decided to stand for country, to help. I remember thinking, when I was very young, that if I ever get rich, I will go back to the village, because I once traveled to the village and saw, substandard living conditions, different from the standard I was in the urban area. So
Mhm.
I said to myself, when I started at a very early age, wishing to get very rich, so that I can help these people uplift their conditions. So I think that later became amplified, and I saw that of Africa itself, you know.
I think it's
So
interesting that people have
yeah,
been saying that that consciousness came from their journey in the US and
yes,
their understanding that some of these things are really happening. And what I always tell people is that, sometimes when I'm on the continent, one of the hardest things for me to continue to remember is that the experiences that I move through the world with and the consciousness that I move through the world with is not always accessible to other people. And so the way and the lens through which they view race or class or whatever is sometimes very limited, based on the experience. And then obviously it could be the other way around. I have a limited scope based on what I come from, right? What
yeah.
are some of the specific things as you're in college and you're now like, do you live in an African community or are you now interacting with other African Americans and what kind of experiences are you having?
Yeah. Before delving into the experiences I had in my surroundings in the US, I would just like to touch on the fact that you mentioned you were, amazed that my perspective about Africa changed after I traveled to the US.
Hmm.
This I think this is true of everybody everywhere. I mean, uh, at some point you will be limited. Your scope of life will be limited to your environment.
Hmm.
Yeah, apart from TV and the media and all that, your scope of life is limited to your environment and the what you see on TV, you know. And from your end, what mostly the mainstream media showed was the despicable conditions of Africa. And from here, what they showed us was that everywhere is Hollywood in the West, you
Right.
know. So you can tell why we all wanted to migrate to the West, and why some of you also think of Africa, as poor and not many opportunities as well. So this is why traveling is very important. Being a global citizen, being a global person, it helps you broaden your perspective, see different cultures, so that you can make comparisons, you can make analysis. You will not suffer from analysis paralysis if you really, really travel, you know. So, I mean, I've traveled to Singapore, I've traveled to Malaysia, to Turkey, to China. I've been to many places around the world, Dubai, and so I mean, it gives me the ability to be able to compare and contrast
Mhm.
between, or among environments, and form a bigger opinion about, the global perspective. Coming to my experiences in the US, I mainly lived in the Bronx, you know, although I stayed in Portchester, upstate New York, at some point in time, when I was trying to attend Manhattanville College in Porches, in upstate New York, Portchester.
Mhm.
So later on, I moved to Riverdale, and then later in the Bronx. So I spent most of my time in the Bronx, where I interacted with African Americans, Hispanics, and other, races and cultures. My experiences was mixed with
Mm.
African Americans. Yeah. So I didn't remember the specifics, but I remembered how I felt with people. Sometimes you can't remember specifics, but you always remember how you feel. You know, uh, what I could remember was that there were some very open-minded people, talking about African Americans. Some people, they were very welcoming. They're just very nice people. They're just understanding. They had this global, perspective. They associate with, with Africa. They knew that their roots were Africa, and they loved, African people. Some were the opposite of that also. You know, as I said, it was mixed. Some were very, welcoming. You know, some I had a conversation with a lot of them. Someone told me, one African American told me that, um, hey, we are the same people. It's just that we are being separated
Mm.
by the ozone, sort of, but we are the same people. So I felt very, very good, talking to those types of African Americans, knowing that they hold this notion that we are one people, that we are the same, that it was just history that separated us. They didn't hold no grudges, on anything, no superiority or inferiority complex, and all these things, all these stereotypes that are happening right now between us. Um, I encountered other people who told me that, hey, you guys sold us, so to hell with you, with y'all, you know what I mean? I mean, some were very, aggressive on me. I remember trying to get to the New York City subway. I met this lady who was selling this Metro card, and, she didn't want to talk to me, African American lady. And when I asked her why she doesn't want to talk with me, she said, "Hey, go back to where you're from." you know. So you see, you unlike her, you meet other very nice people, who will just tell me that, oh, you are so beautiful, your skin color is so beautiful, and I remembered I always wanted to marry an African American woman, you know, yeah, because I said to myself, I mean, look, I mean, we are different people. We are the same people, but we have different orientations. I was born in Africa. I am black, and these folks are born in the U.S. with different culture. So I was always very inquisitive, and I like African American ways also. I
What do you
think
like about it?
their ways of doing things, I like the difference, what I mean, in with us, you know what I mean. So I definitely, I said to myself, look, hey, I'm gonna find me a fine African American woman and marry to her, so that I can get to know, what I mean, I can get to, I don't know what to say. I can get to like her more. I can get to like these people more, I mean, because when I am very close, I will get to know a lot more about these people. And, you know, although I'm saying these people, but, we are one. It's just the difference in
It's an
environment
interesting
and
way. A
all.
lot of
Yeah.
Africans say these people or you people, but it's
Yeah,
in an
exactly.
American context, it means
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
thing because
Yeah.
we're
It
used
means
to
one
it
thing. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
racism and wrapped up in that. But in an African context, it means
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
completely different. Yeah.
Yeah, this people just means that if we are different, we are born in different cultures,
Hmm.
and different environments. Yeah,
How many
but
ethnic groups are there in Gambia?
oh, in Gambia there are about 6 to 7 ethnic groups, if I can,
Hmm.
yeah,
And do
recollect
you
very well.
see, like, would you say these people to somebody that's Gambian but of another group?
Uh Not really, not very deeply, because we have our ethnic differences, trust. We gossip like one another. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, but we coexist, and it's nothing serious. Some of my best friends are in another ethnic group. We intermarry as well. My nieces and their father is from another ethnic group. We speak each other's languages, but there is still this ethnic, sort of, I mean, differences a little
Mhm.
bit, you know.
Would you
But
say would you say that the ethnic differences are stronger than your national identity, or the national identity is stronger than the ethnic differences?
the natural identity is stronger,
Okay.
because
As
yeah,
a
I would sit
Gambian.
as a Gambian. I would sit with a different ethnic group. We sit together. After this interview, I'm sitting with 2 or 3 other ethnic groups, and we do attire the local tea that we brew and drink together. So the other one just called me, and we live very, very, very harmoniously. We intermarry, we speak. I mean, there is not much difference, but that is human nature. Human beings gravitate toward their group, their kind,
Hmm.
but yeah, this generation is trying to, do away with this ethnic consciousness and bring out a national, consciousness, that we are all Gambians and not, I am Wolof and the other is Mandinka or the other is Wolof, I mean, we coexist very peacefully. Our parents coexisted very peacefully. The government is composed of all ethnic groups, and although there are politicians who try to, galvanize, who try to leverage on this ethnic,
Hmm.
especially, you know what I mean, in order to
Is there
gain
any group
vote.
that has like a larger amount? What are the ethnic groups in Gambia? So it's
Yes, the ethnic
Wolof.
groups is Wolof, Mandinka, Jola, Sarahule, Fula, Manjago. These are the main six ethnic groups. The majority is Mandinka, then you have the Fula, then you have the Wolof, then you have the Jola and the others.
How many of
So
those
they,
languages do you speak?
oh, I speak only one, to be honest with you. I speak only one, but there are many, many people, almost more than half the population. They speak two or three or four.
Yeah.
Some speak four languages. But unfortunately, because where I grew up, it's mainly inhabited by my ethnic group. So I
Which
didn't.
ethnic
But
group are you?
I am a Wolof.
Oh, you're Wolof.
I am
Uh,
Wolof, yeah.
all I know is Ninglade.
Nanga Def.
I know
So,
a little bit of Fulani.
oh, a little bit
Tanaila.
of Fula. Oh,
Tanaila.
Tanaala, Jamtung. Oh, very nice. Yeah. My dad speaks three languages. My brothers speak because they've lived with, we live in communities. But in the greater Banjul area, we live together, although there are areas that are populated by a certain ethnic group, But
Mm,
now, since we are intermarrying, and it's very difficult now to know who is who,
mhm.
because my sister is married to another ethnic group, a Mandinka, and my nieces turn out to be half this, half that. So eventually we're doing away. And, most of us, I mean, take the content of your character,
Mm,
rather than the ethnicity of the individual,
mhm,
because if my own ethnicity do wrong, I say, he did wrong. I will say he did something wrong, and I will condemn him for that, you know,
mhm.
So I don't care who is who, I mean, to me, that is just myopic and parochial, I mean, ethnicity it's not very well entrenched, here, definitely in Gambia. Yeah,
So, how
yeah,
did Gambia become this hot spot, this hotbed for, I know so many people coming. How did it
yeah.
become that?
Yeah, Gambia is the first of all is the smiling coast of West Africa. Our coast, yeah, our coastline is just unique. And if you know very well, I mean, we believe in spirituality as well. And Gambia itself, the geographic entity of Gambia, has a spiritual significance in
Mm,
Africa because, this is one of the most navigable rivers we have in Gambia. In fact, the river was the cause of the Anglo-French rivalry during colonial days when they were scrambling for Africa.
mm,
The British told the French, "Hey, we are going to take this land," and they drew the land following the river, the shape of the river. So the
mm.
British were only interested in the river because the river has some spiritual significance as well, you know. And Gambia, secondly, Gambia became a hotbed for um, our brothers and our cousins repatriating to the continent. First, the people are super friendly.
Yeah.
They're just so sweet people. Gambians are very nice. You know, and the country is very beautiful. The landscape is just very, very, very beautiful.
Mhm.
And Gambia is very cheap also. It's the not cheap in the negative connotation, but things
You can
are
afford to live.
you can afford to live here.
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
cost of living is not very high. you know. I mean, I mean, with small amount of dollars, you can just be a king here, you know.
Mhm.
So, and there is something about Gambia also. I mean, African with all her negative stuff
Oh, we're gonna get into
about
Afrikaner.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah. But
we have
I
to
just want to
introduce
side,
Afrikaner.
yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
might not know.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. But just one, I will just pick one aspect of utterances to contextualize it here. That even with all her utterances against Gambia and the people, one of what he said was that when I came to Gambia, the the spirit, there is this peaceful spirit that 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 there is this peace that you feel
Mhm.
in Gambia. There is less crime in Gambia. You can walk I mean, at 3 a.m. at night, and nobody stops you. And nobody has a business with you. You will hear a homicide every 2 years. Or recently there were some few folks who stabbed each other, one or two, but you rarely hear homicides in Gambia.
Mm.
It's a very, 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 very safe country. And recently we started seeing some burglaries, here and there, but it's a very, 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 very safe country. This is why Gambia is attracting not only diasporans, but even white people, you
Mhm.
know, own land in, some of them decide to come to Gambia and stay here.
Mhm.
So Gambia is just a mecca for peace, and you can get a fresh fish. You can just go and grab a fresh fish from the river, from the sea, and just you can just live natural. There are very nice spots, nice restaurants in Gambia, nice hotels. You can afford to live in a mansion, and it's not going to cost you. You can live a dream in Gambia, basically. Yeah,
Mm. So
yeah,
let's talk about, so just for reference,
yeah,
Gambia is this hot spot. And so you do have a lot of African Americans. And if you guys are keeping up, there
yes,
are tons of conferences and people that have YouTubes and all of these things. And one particular African
yeah,
American woman, I don't even know her real name. All I do is call her Afri-Karen. But she was pretty derogatory and problematic in a lot of her videos around her move to Gambia. And one of your bloggers, I think from Gambia, coined her Afri Karen. So, like
yes,
the way that we call white women Karens because of the problematic nature of how they deal with Blackness in America, they have
yeah,
coined her Afri Karen for the problematic nature of how she's dealing um, in Africa. And she
yeah,
has really been there for 3 or 4 months and had a whole lot to say. What
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how Gambia is responding to this YouTube sensation that's saying all of these terrible things about people in the country.
Yeah. For Afrikaans case, Gambians are really very angry at her. They didn't like what she said. And Afrikaans is really a turnoff for African Americans trying to come to, Gambia to establish there or to live there. She sends a negative signal of the country, although some are arguing that there is an element of truth to what she's saying. Yes, of course, there is some element of truth, and but that should be put to context also of the economic
Absolutely.
situation, yeah, of the country.
And
You know,
how we
yeah,
communicate these differences between us and what we should see, the way that I look at it. And I love Africa and I'm there often and I'm moving through countries and I'm building relationships, but how I always look at it is that when you find these gaps on the continent, it's an
mhm.
opportunity. So
Exactly,
rather, yeah, rather
exactly,
than beat everybody up, you
Yeah,
understand that these gaps and these spaces, whether it's education or whether it's infrastructure, or whether it's,
exactly.
providing the service that is missing, to me,
Yeah,
these are ways that are they're big, opportunity gaps. And if
exactly.
you can look at it like that, um,
Exactly.
you know, it'll be a
Yeah,
better thing.
yeah, definitely, definitely. What Africans should have done is to turn these weaknesses into opportunities,
Hmm.
for investment. I mean, you cannot blame Africa for certain things because, Africa started in the 1960s
Hmm.
to develop their own countries.
Hmm.
Prior to the 60s, no African had a say in the running of Africa,
Right.
until we had independence and we started, I mean, running. And still after that independence, we still have this colonial, neo-colonial instruments that are hanging over us still.
Hmm.
Look at French West Africa. They made them sign a pact
It's
that
insane. Yeah.
is insane. That takes $500 billion every year to the French treasury. Although Africans, um, the problem has an African solution also, you know, but uh, if we are not very careful and if we do not devise a very good roadmap, I mean, this will be very difficult to solve. And there is this disadvantage of complexity also of the international financial systems. Africa don't have control over their monetary policies. It is
Hmm.
policed by the IMF. What the West is doing, quantitative easing, Africa cannot do quantitative easing. So we had to rely on loans and grants. Imagine that, to develop our countries.
For,
So
for
yeah,
loans and grants off the money that they made from stealing the resources that you
thank you
had.
very much. Thank you. So they made this money out from stealing the resources or from just sometimes from just printing. They create an artificial debt,
Mhm.
and put it in their balance sheets and create money
Yeah.
to pay that debt, whilst that debt can be written off. So these are artificial stuffs that they attach value to, and IMF is policing this arrangement. If an African country wants to do it to pump money for the development of their country, they will say no, and they will use the international financial arrangement to create inflation and chaos in your country. So this is what was happening to Zimbabwe when they started seizing these huge
Airport.
lands, huge lands, seized by these white people, you
Mhm.
know, during the colonial days.
Mhm.
So there is a problem. So Africans should just understand that, you know, I mean, things are developing, things are taking shape in the continent. The continent is changing, and you do not insult people's
In
nature.
your own country.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, you are saying, you are mocking the way we talk. I mean, come on, this is our environment. We will have an accent to you.
Mhm.
You expect that we cannot be talking like Americans.
Yeah.
you know,
I think a
exactly.
lot of this, Suleiman,
Yeah,
will be a part of what I always tell people is that you can leave
yeah,
the US,
yeah.
but you have to also decolonize your mind. And that's the
Exactly.
harder part for all of us.
Exactly.
All of
Yeah,
us
yeah,
have a decolonization of how we think. And
exactly.
Americans often drag
Yeah,
their perceptions and ways of understanding the continent and power. We've
yeah,
been deeply influenced by the West,
yeah,
by the way that the West goes about money and community. And one of the things that I always tell people is that if you allow yourself to be African and be in
mhm,
it and of it, the community that you will experience, the relationships that you will develop are so meaningful and so
exactly,
powerful. And, Black Americans really have a cultural capital that is invaluable on the continent. And if you know how to
exactly,
build relationships, because Africa is
Yes,
all about relationships. You can
exactly,
use that cultural capital. In your
exactly.
mind, do Gambians want us there? What is your vision for how this works as we move forward collectively?
Yes, before talking about do Gambians want you there, I just want to buttress on this capital you were talking about, this opportunity for African Americans. Before Chinese come in and invest in Africa, why not our own African Americans come in and invest? And they are investing in their own land also. This is their own country. To me, this issue of sovereignty, BS, it's all just, these, I mean, concepts that have been brought about by colonialism. There is nothing like citizenship arrangements when it comes to our African American people. We will have to recommend the amendment of all the constitutions in Africa to declare African American citizens, because I mean they went to America, they were taken to America under extraordinary circumstances. So obviously their automatic citizenship to Africa should be extraordinary as well. We shouldn't go by these constitutions and all these things, you know. So obviously, if African Americans come to Africa, not even to invest, they can just come in and live and be citizens. Because if we tie their coming to investments also, it will be like, we are bonded by material things. We
Mhm.
shouldn't be
Yes,
bonded
you
by
checked me one
material things.
day and
Yes,
said,
yeah. I don't like that. I would say African Americans can come to Africa. It's their natural land. They can claim it. This is their natural land with investments or without investments you
mhm,
know so the feedback we are getting from here is that we do want African Americans to come back to invest. We want you in the continent. In fact, many are advocating for that, that these are our people. You get the reaction when you talk to people in the neighborhood, when you
mhm.
post on Facebook. These constitute surveys. Although there are also people, like in both sides of the aisle, who are just ill-concepted. They will say, hey, these people, we don't want them here. They will, you see African, and all these stuff. So they just some people from both sides of the aisle who have this negative notion of each other,
And
which I
I
think it's,
think there
yeah.
always will be just human nature to not want
Exactly,
outsiders.
exactly,
But how do we
exactly.
bridge that? What do you think is the major factor in getting us to a better place where we're working towards
Uh-huh.
Black?
Yes. For African Americans, the um African Americans should embrace Africa, more. You know, I mean, Africans also should embrace African Americans more. Our interactions should increase, you know, and this starts from the leadership of African Americans. I mean, you have a core leadership there. you know
Mhm,
if if they see this leadership coming to Africa, these celebrities, those influential African Americans, we saw it in Ghana, and that was a good move. But they shouldn't wait to be called. you know they should have known that this is our continent, this is our roots. Let's go back there and forge relationships with the leadership of the continent. you know
mhm,
Celebrities are there in the US making fortunes, and investing in Africa is better for them. It's a win for them, because they're investing it in their own land, and they will be proud that the continent they're from is developing. I mean, when I was in America, I saw this negative image of Africa. I felt very bad, and I'm sure African Americans too do feel very bad when they see Africa portrayed negatively. I can bet that because I mean they Africa is the only place they can identify with. You know,
Mm,
although I hear about a movement trying to disassociate themselves with Africa, and all these, these are just machinations of the enemy, to separate us, more. But
mhm,
to bridge this divide, I think there should be more interaction. You are doing a good job in that respect, coming to Africa, to reach out. I see this bad blood even in the US between Africans and African Americans,
mhm,
which is not right. Although there is some good blood also, because I've moved out with African Americans, hang out in their homes, and they were very welcoming. But others just saw me with that eye, which we should have embraced each other. We are one people. I mean, forget about history, whatever happened. You know what I mean? I mean, who was responsible for those things? And we don't know the details of those things. We don't know the environment behind what happened in the future, what triggered that, what, you can never get into the depth of it. You may think that this is what happened during slavery or what caused the slavery. I mean, I think we should just, I mean, embrace that history for history's sake. But we
mm.
shouldn't hold that grudge against each other. It's just going to further complicate the issue. And
I
no
think we need
matter
to
how,
heal. And
yeah,
healing does require the hard stuff. It requires the
yeah,
hard conversations.
yeah,
And it does, we do know a lot about enslavement. We know a
yeah,
lot already of what has happened. And I think
yeah,
really educating each other, because I think a lot of on both ends, I think there is some accountability on Africa's side, right? And
yeah,
but understanding, I know that people don't always understand the complexities. So people will say African, and it's really this tribe and this tribe, and people aren't selling their own people into slavery. Maybe someone was a prisoner of war from some other place. It's like all of these different layers of complications on that conversation. But I do think it can be deconstructed. I do think we can have, strong history around it. But I think looking towards the future is what's going to benefit us both. I believe as an African American, Africa is my birthright, and I don't have to ask permission to be a part of it. But I come humbly and I come respectfully to be a part of it. And I understand that I have to learn culture. So I try to learn more than I speak when I'm on the continent.
very well.
But I also, like I think that we have a lot of things to learn about each other, and a lot of that is gonna take some healing. People are
Exactly.
hurt. Yeah,
Yeah,
and this is generational hurt. And then I think
yeah,
the immigrant experience in America also can be very shocking and can be very hurtful. So I've heard
yeah,
stories from every different direction. When you think about Blackness, do you see yourself, do you understand Blackness in the way that I think about it as a political identity or an identifier? I know that that's sometimes not always the same way that African people, think about Blackness.
yeah. Uh, Yeah, talking about blackness, I know we don't have time, but allow me just to make two sentences about this slavery issue. It is very important. I think it's the source of all this hurting, it's the
The
source of
hurt.
all this animosity, the hurt, and all this stuff. But, I mean, what can you do? I mean, those who perpetrated slavery, by the way, I hear you say there is some responsibility on the part of Africa. Yes, some Africans participated in it.
Mhm,
Not all Africans. There were people fighting against the slaves, the slave traders,
mhm,
because their people were targeted. So, you have this whole complexity. And there was the institution of slavery in Africa before the white man came. But our slavery was more human. It was just more of domestic help or by tradition, by trade and all these, and so there are many issues, and our ancestors did it. It's not the ancestors of the Africans, it's the ancestors of you and I. We share those ancestors. So what that has to do with the African? If you tell me now your ancestors enslaved us,
Ooh,
I will also tell you your
your
ancestors slave
ancestors
you.
enslaved you.
So we share the same ancestors.
All
So
right.
you can, you
I think
see,
that's a
yeah,
cute argument, but I do think that there is, when
yeah,
we think about this idea of accountability, there
but
are
Africa
pro-
will accept responsibility. I agree. Africa should
I think
definitely
that
accept.
I
Yeah,
mean, that's funny. I'm actually going to use that. There we share these ancestors. It's like telling your sister, your mama did this to
thank
your
you.
both of your mamas.
Exactly.
No, I understand. But when I think about it, I mean, I think that there are ways, like,
Yeah,
reparations
yeah,
is something that is a real conversation. And you have countries, I
yeah,
don't know what's going on in Gambia, but like in
yeah,
Benin, there are programs where you can trace exactly what families were benefits of the slave trade. I don't think it's a different conversation than
yeah,
holding,
yeah.
the
Exactly.
ancestors
Yeah,
of
yeah,
white slave owners.
yeah.
I think
I
it's the same
understand. Yeah,
conversation. But I think that there's a broad way that we can look at it that's beneficial,
I,
mutually beneficial.
yes,
And
I agree. I
reparations,
agree.
yeah, for African Americans
Yeah,
to me and, all the other
yeah,
Africans that,
yeah. I
Brazilians and everyone
agree.
else.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
but
I mean,
shouldn't be a
citizenship
cause
is a good
for
start.
animosity. Yeah, yeah. Shouldn't be a cause of animosity. We can just deconstruct it. I mean, assign responsibilities to those who were responsible, and we move on.
Mhm.
So coming back to identity, I believe
Yes.
in
What
a
does
in a black
blackness mean
identity.
to you, Suleiman Gaye?
Blackness should be a political, economic, cultural, and everything identity. Political, social, cultural, economic identity. I mean, there has to be a black nation. you know I mean, if we do not have a black political entity, forget it. We and the black nation should be Africa. you know I believe in, even if African Americans should stay in America, it will be good to identify with Africa and to promote the African nation,
Mm,
you know yeah, so that we can be one people. But one it's one body that has branches and leaves like a tree. So the
mhm,
root of the tree should be Africa. So we should see ourselves as that, such that, we empower the African continent, have an economic base, be a world power, have our weapons of mass destruction and all this. Yes, I say it, so that we will not be threatened by any other civilization. Today, if I was ruling Africa today and I was this powerful, I would have rescued my African American cousins. You know what I mean? From the
mm.
police or from whatever, because I will send a warning to the US to stop treating my cousins bad. You know what? So we should have this black nation to defend African people throughout the world. I mean, anywhere you go, Africa is looked at the same lens.
Mm.
I've traveled to many countries, and it's just
Mm.
this media, this mainstream media, you know, created by the West,
Mhm.
that is polluting the minds of the globe about Africa. Anywhere
Do
you
you
go,
think
you
that
will be.
you're going to see a united African states before we leave this earth?
Yes, I believe that everything is possible, although the signs are not there yet, because we are dealing with, I mean, greedy groups, from greedy leaders, from
Mhm.
greedy, I mean, not greedy leaders, from the civil societies are also not I don't know how to describe them even, because when Africa is to unite, it has to be, the wind has to blow for it. It has to be from all angles.
Yeah.
Women, the African Americans should fight for it also. Women, African women, civil societies, the church, Muslim elders, they should all, you know, contribute to the voice of African unity. But I don't. If you want to leave it to leaders only, this embarrassed generation, because we have a word for our parents who were ruling Africa as the embarrassed generation, that we are not going
Mm,
to accept the status quo. Really, really young ones, that we are
the
ready to
embarrassed
change this
generation.
continent for good. But
Is
unfortunately,
that wow? You call
yeah,
them
it's
the
our
embarrassed,
huh?
the embarrassed
Yes,
generation.
we call them the embarrassed generation, because they made Africa the laughing stock of the world, and this generation do not accept them. We cannot accept Africa to be in this status, So, but, you know, I mean, we are gradually getting, rid of them easy. They have to go naturally also. You will not force them out. You don't want to create chaos, and
Mhm,
all this. But eventually they will go out naturally. They are going slowly, you
mhm.
know, because, so these leaders, perhaps they are not ready to unite the continent. It would have taken Nigeria, Ethiopia, South Africa, the big the four biggest powers in Africa, to unite the whole continent, because
Yeah,
everybody else will rally around them.
yeah.
What are they waiting for? Because they want to be presidents. They want to maintain their privileges and all these things. Their hegemonies and all these things. So, the desirable thing is for Africa to unite, to be one country like the United States of Africa.
Mhm.
In that way, we can harness the power of unity, the power of, I mean, the whole is better than, the pieces. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So we can make use of this, you know, instead of just ruling African states, these fragmented states. It's going to take a very long time for these fragmented states individually. And we have to dismantle the foundation of governance of Africa if we want Africa to rise, because these are colonial foundations, neo-colonial foundations. So we have to change the instruments of governance, the institutional arrangements, and do something African. You know what I mean? So the ideas are there. We have the expertise. There are intellectuals all over. So what is preventing this continent from rising when we are helping? A Nigerian, for example, is behind Scotland's 5G technology. So look at that.
Yeah.
We have Africans building technologies. In a Ghanaian is building drones in the US, and all these things. We have these experts. We can create a technology base, just like China,
Yes.
So, I don't know what, yeah, you know, yeah.
This has
So I
been
believe in this
so good.
political, economic, yeah, yeah. I believe in a political, economic, and social identity for Africa. We have to have an economic identity also. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We
Yes.
have to, have technology built by Black people, Africans. You know, we have to have a market, trillions of dollars of markets, that
Mm,
we will be able to. There can be a balance of economic power in the world. You know,
mhm.
we have to have a political identity. We have to have a government, an
Mm,
African government. We have to have a cultural identity also as Black people. We would like to take away all this tribe. I mean, the big tribe should be black people,
mm,
and but we can maintain our ethnicities, because ethnicity and culture is very good, because I
yes.
think culture is what make Africa to be very great. So we can
And rich
maintain these
and
cultures and all
interesting
this.
and
But
exciting.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Ooh, sorry,
Sulayman,
my phone. Yeah, wow, wow, wow,
thank you so much. Are you
wow.
there?
Thank you. You are losing me. I'm losing power. Sorry.
Oh, it was so good to
Wow,
talk
wow,
to
wow.
you. Thank you so much. I'll see you in Gambia soon. So thanks everybody for checking in to Working Towards Black today. The show comes on every Tuesday and Thursday at 6. Sometimes we change the time depending on where the person is in the world. And we hope that you continue to watch and that you participate in our the deconstruction space that I post on Facebook. I think this part is really important to keep the dialogue going. Sometimes we're going to bring up things in conversation and you're going to have more stuff to say about it. You're going to conflict with it or agree with it. And I want to hear all of those things. So I encourage you guys to participate in these post discussions. Please join the global movement on Facebook. This movement really is pulling together leaders of the diaspora of Africa so that we can build relationships across the globe. I have a lot of things coming when the world opens up, when the world opens. Free Black Magazine, Free Black Woman Magazine is launching August 5th. www.freeblackwomanmagazine.com. If you're looking for a publication that really does not police the voice of Black men and women, if you're looking for publications that edify us, that push at our limits, that ask us to heal trauma, that gets deep and then that's funny and that's light as well and beautiful, please, subscribe to the magazine. If you're interested in advertising, we have very competitive rates for small businesses and for corporations. And that again is www.freeblackwoman.com, freeblackwomanmagazine.com. And there's so many other things to get involved with, but that's all I'm going to tell you guys for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Gambia, I'll see you guys soon.